This is the 21st century, but we are still discussing if homosexuality should be accepted or not. That's the sad reality of Indian politics. The Supreme Court did decriminalize same-sex relations in 2018, but there is a big difference between decriminalization and acceptance, because Indian society and politicians are yet to embrace the LGBT community. On Monday, we saw a prime example of this. BJP MP Sushil Modi stood up in Parliament and opposed the idea of same-sex marriages. He says that same-sex relations are okay, but same-sex marriages, Bhagwan nahi. Why? Because according to Mr. Sushil Modi, marriage is something pure and cannot be extended to same-sex couples. He further said that judges in the Supreme Court, 2 judges sitting in a room in the Supreme Court, cannot decide on the matter. He says it must be decided and debated by the Indian Parliament. I get that everyone has their personal opinions on this issue, but opposing same-sex marriage is undoubtedly a very regressive position. Is that the position of the government of India as well? We don't know, because the government of India has been asked by the Supreme Court what their position on same-sex marriages is. 2 notices have gone out, no response so far. More than 32 countries in the world, by the way, have legalized same-sex marriages, but India is not one of them. Is that acceptable for a country which is also the largest democracy in the world, a country which champions freedom and equality abroad? Mr. Sushil Modi is joining me on the show tonight, but before that, I want you to listen in to what he said in Parliament.
कि भारत के अंदर same sex marriage is neither recognized nor accepted in any uncodified personal laws like Muslim personal law. 2 जज बैठकर इस प्रकार के सामाजिक मुद्दों पर निर्णय नहीं ले सकते हैं. संसद में इस पर डिबेट होनी चाहिए.
सुशील मोदी जी, हमसे जुड़ने के लिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. पहला सवाल स्ट्रेट सवाल है. Based on what you said in Parliament, what is your problem with same-sex unions?
No, it is not my problem. It is a problem of the entire country. See, staying together and decriminalizing same-sexual homosexuality is one thing. But giving it as a sanction, as a marriage, it is, see, the Indian ethos, Indian culture, Indian traditions, rituals. Marriage means a marriage between man and women. It is a biological man and biological women. So, it is not America. And America also took so many years. They have only last week they have enacted that law. They have enacted it only last week. And only in 32 countries it has been legalized. And in the Asian countries only Taiwan has legalized their same-sex marriage. So either the Muslim personal law, Hindu Marriage Act, or any other law in India, or any society, Hindu, Sikh, Muslim, Isai, nobody will tolerate giving sanction to same-sex marriage. So it is not my personal problem. I have nothing to do with it. But the feeling which I got it, and when I raised this issue in Parliament, a number of MPs, they came and they were not knowing this issue also. So this is a very big issue, and the 2 judges sitting in the Supreme Court, they should not take any decision. It should have a wider debate in the Parliament, in the society, and they should take cognizance of the feelings of this country also.
So let me ask you this. You are saying that, and this is what you have said on the show, you have also said this in Parliament, that 2 Supreme Court judges sitting in a room cannot take that decision. Here's the question I ask you. You know the Constitution better than I do. You've been the Deputy Chief Minister of Bihar. You have been a minister in the government of India as well. If Supreme Court judges don't decide a matter like this, who will?
No, see, it is not the question of 2 judges sitting in a room. I wanted to say that the court should not take such a decision in a hurry, because it affects the entire society, the entire country. So this is not a question, it is not a legal question only. It has a ramification, social, cultural, other ramifications also. So it is not amending a CRPC and IPC and making some amendments. So this is not legal issue. It is a legal issue, because if you legalize the same-sex marriage, then you have to change a lot more than a dozen of laws, because the Divorce Act, more than a dozen of the acts in which there is a mention of male and female, husband and a wife, parents, and what will happen to the children, because the children require a mother, because the psychological connect of the mother with the children is entirely different thing. And there are so many laws in which there is everywhere it is a mention. Domestic Violence Act, what will happen to the Domestic Violence Act, then the Dowry Act, then the Divorce Act, then the succession, then adoption. So this is not, that's why I'm telling you, it is not a simple issue of amending one section of the article, and they don't have a fundamental right. It is not a fundamental right to have a same-sex marriage. So I don't think the society is a sanction to these things. And so when I say 2 judges entering a room, it means the court shall take the cognizance of the society. It does not mean that 2 judges sitting in a single room and taking decision. I'm not literally saying in that form. What I mean to say, if Supreme Court or the High Court, any court, they should have to take the cognizance of the cultural ethos of the society, of the feelings of the society, of the tradition of the society. Who will recognize, who will, if they will go somewhere and they will go to a school, what they will introduce themselves? He is my wife or he is my husband. So it is a very difficult situation. So at least people like us and crores of people, they don't digest such type of things. So only I wanted to say to the judges, it should be debated in the society, in the parliament, everywhere, and no judgment, no decision should be taken in a hurry. That's all I wanted to say.
So the fact is that the decision will not be taken in a hurry. The fact is that the matter is in the Supreme Court. The fact is that the government of India has been asked what their view on it is, and the government of India has so far not gotten back to the Supreme Court with what its view is on making the Special Marriage Act gender neutral. But many people will debate, the Supreme Court has already decided on the matter. The Supreme Court has legalized same-sex relationships. So the next step obviously is same-sex unions or marriages. Where is the problem in that?
See, this is an entirely different thing. Decriminalizing same sex is one thing. 2 people are staying in a room, whatever they want to do, they do. If you decriminalize it, it means police can't interfere. Earlier, police used to arrest those people, they used to interfere. So decriminalizing of 377, it does not mean giving a legal sanction to marriage. Again, I'm saying, marriage is entirely different thing. Marriage is connected with the family. Marriage is connected with the children. So living together of 2 persons is one thing that has been decriminalized. If say lesbian or the gay, they are staying together, two men or women, that is one thing. But giving it a legal sanction is entirely different thing. So you can't compare that living together is one thing, is the same thing as giving sanction as a marriage. So I don't think, and as far as I know, Government of India is also opposed in the Delhi High Court. And I don't think the India government will, no government can support, no political party can come out in support of such type of institution or such type of providing sanction, legal sanction to such kind of marriages.
But sir, the American president has just done it. And there are 32 countries in this world which have legalized gay marriage. I want to ask you, your view in Parliament or on this show, is that going to be the view of the government of India on same-sex marriages in the Supreme Court as well, sir? Are you reflecting the government's view?
See, already Government of India has filed an affidavit in the High Court. So in the Delhi High Court, as far as I know, the Delhi High Court, Government of India has already filed an affidavit. Now all the cases have been will be transferred to the Supreme Court, and I don't think Government of India can take any can file any other affidavit and can go and can take another decision. And I raise this issue even to pressurize the union government They should not come under the pressure of this left liberal people, this left liberal democratic people who want to convert India into America. As far as the cultural ethos are concerned, India is entirely different with the Western concept of Western ethos. And I'm talking about Asian countries only. Only Taiwan has legalized. No other country, even in the Asia. Even the G7 countries, Japan is still not recognized. Though Japan is a part of the Asian culture is different from the Western culture. And Indian culture is also different from the Western culture. So we have to take cognizance of all these things.
Sir, actually, as I said, 33 countries have already legalized same-sex marriages. So there are many countries that have done it, actually. But many people will say, I mean, what do you mean by left liberals, first of all? And if left liberals say, live and let live, that's a good thing. Burai kya hai?
I told you earlier also, the Indian ethos, culture, ritual, traditions, all these say that marriage means man and women. It can't be men and men, it can't be men and women. And in the closed room, whatever they want to do, they can do it. That's another thing. So that is a matter of privacy. But when the question of marriage arises, so no religion, no society will accept. And even in the American Parliament, a good number of Republicans, they have voted against that resolution.
Okay, Mr. Modi, we'll leave it there for the moment. You have put your views forth very candidly here on Mirror Now, so thank you very much. Now, what we are waiting to see is if your views are the Government of India's views in the Supreme Court as well. Thank you very much for your time here on Mirror Now. Neil Pate is a senior journalist. He's joining me on the broadcast. He got married to Dr. Roop Gursinghani, his partner of 20 years in the UK. Because in India, there is, of course, no law that permits gay marriages. And Aditya Bandyopadhyay is a Supreme Court lawyer. He's an equal rights activist and also someone who was part of that historic case which bore results in 2018. Neil, I'm going to ask you first whether you have any reactions to what Sushil Modi ji is saying. He's saying, you know, shadi is about bacche, shadi is about inheritance. Sometimes shadi is also about divorce, and it's more importantly about families. And the LGBT community cannot handle all of that.
You know, I beg to differ. I mean, good evening, firstly, to everyone, but I beg to differ with what he's saying. I mean, if one just goes back to our own culture, which he's been talking about, I mean, we seriously need to refer to our own culture and certain ancient texts that we have. And then we realize that, you know, this whole thing just falls flat. What is important is love between two people, two individuals, and love is a celebration. I mean, you know, and it's as simple as that. I mean, I don't know what's the problem over here. And as far as marriage is concerned, I think it is important because on one end, we are saying India is a country which is, you know, the world is looking up to, and then we talk of equal rights. And here we are, where we're taking 10 steps back. And that's a big drawback for us, I think. Also, with marriage,
okay.
once it's...
Neil, so here's the thing: if you heard the interview, give me a moment here. Let me ask you a specific question. Sushil Modi ji here on this interview says that, you know, this is a very odd situation if you let same-sex marriages take place, because, you know, if there is a marriage, there will be a child somehow, and if there is a child, who mothers the child? Who's the mother to the child? When you go to a school, for example, for his or her admission, what will you say about who the mother is or who the father is? When you hear things like that, and he's not the only one saying it, when you hear things like that, Neil, what is your response to them usually?
You know, I'd like to add a bit over here. I mean, when we talk of values, you know, the values that we talk of, family values, let me make it very clear to Mr. Modi and few others who think like that. I mean, we're also children of some parents. Please get that thing first. And when you talk of children and school admissions and taking care of parents, I'd like to point out over here that both me and my partner, we've been together for 20 years, and we've taken care of our parents in their sunset years. Both his parents as well as my parents, right till the date they died. including our neighbors and the society that we live in, everybody is so forthcoming and accepting. I mean, so there is no question. I mean, it's as simple as that. And even if a child has to be admitted in school or college, I mean, you introduce a person as my partner, as my same sex partner, husband or wife. I mean, where's the problem in that? I mean, I seriously don't see any problem in that.
Aditya Bandyopadhyay, as someone who was part of that historic judgment, someone who was part of the team that got us that historic judgment, I would have thought, logically speaking, if same-sex relations
Yes.
have been legalized in this country, they have been decriminalized, logically the next step would be same-sex marriages. But it seems it's not going to be as
Yes.
easy as anyone thought.
So this is history repeating itself, what Mr. Modi is saying. See, the thing is, we have heard these arguments during the 377 struggle as well, when every hell was supposed to break loose the moment decriminalization happened and same-sex relationship was legalized in this country, and it is happening again. There is a political angle to it and there is a legal angle to it. I will not get into the cultural argument or statements that my other friend was just now making, because that is completely peripheral to the issue here. The issue here is about constitutional rights, about fundamental rights, about equality, and whether somebody likes it or not. It is not a question of cultural norms or morality or anything of that sort, and that is very well established law by now. So keeping that thing aside, the question of whether these are bogeys that are raised every time, the question of giving some kind of equality, non-discrimination to LGBT people comes up. And the reason it happens has less to do with the law as it stands in this country, because the constitutional law is now settled that there cannot be discrimination. That there cannot be discrimination also essentially means that there has to be equality and parity in questions of all aspects of enjoyment of rights, which includes marriage. So that bit is now a settled law. The question, the Supreme Court has to come up with its own imprimatur on that at some point in time. But that aside, the statements that come from political leaders, even in the last government, the UPA government when it was there, and now are statements that are political statements. I mean, for politics in this country is majoritarian, and somehow the politicians feel that the majority will be against any kind of same-sex union or any kind of same-sex legalization, etc. And therefore, to basically appease their vote banks, they have to come up with these statements. But the fact is that it has been 4 years now that decriminalization has happened, and India is functioning very well. LGBT people are out.
Yeah.
Nobody is creating any anarchy anywhere. And that thing should this thing. And all the arguments that have been made, be it who is going to be the mother in case of marriage, how are we going to deal with the question of adoption or divorce or etc. etc. These are questions that have been dealt with by over 30 jurisdictions of this world by now. Over 30 countries have same-sex marriage or partnership of some sort, and they have dealt with this. And if they could have dealt with it, it can easily be dealt with by the present dispensation as well. The point is that they don't want to do it. There is a lethargy
Absolutely.
and an unwillingness of the legislature to do it. And they also simultaneously would come up and argue that the court cannot intervene. I mean, it is one way of keeping people otherized. It is one way of keeping a certain segment of the population villainized. It is a way of targeting them so that they can show their one-upmanship and appease to their vote bank masses, and at the same time ensure that nothing moves in terms of rights. And that is kind of shameful in a democracy. I mean, yes, we are a majoritarian democracy that people come to power by a majoritarian vote. But the constitution exists so that minorities can also be supported and protected. And that is where the courts come in. And this is completely a case of minority rights of LGBT people, and the courts have to come in and intervene.
Ultimately, it will be the courts that decide. We'll leave it there for the moment. Aditya, thank you very much for joining us. Neil, thank you very much for joining us. I know this was, a very short duration chat and we can go on and all, but I thought it was important to reflect today. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm slipping into a quick break on the show. There's much more news coming up on the other side. There's a COVID explosion in China. Should India be worried? Because what happens in China, we know, doesn't stay in China. That's up next. Do stay with us. NK Arora is joining us live.